So hey guys, welcome again to my vlog. For today's video, we discuss the explanation of the LAB OSI and the TCP. So let's start. So the introductory networking courses is a review of a different network models, including open systems, interconnections or OSI, and transport control protocol internet protocol and the TCP or IP models. So because both models are still used when describing the protocols. These are articles. Take a look of these models. The layers and can be related to each other. So a common part of all introductory networking courses is a review of the different network models. So this includes the open systems, interconnection, and the OSI, and the transport control protocols, internet protocols, or TCP or IP models. Technically speaking, the network. So um, these days, typically, or most and always use either the IPv4 or IPVs or IP version 4 or IP version 6 networking stack. The OSI and TCP or IP were developed in parallel times by different organizations. The OSI models was developed by international organizations of the and the International Telegraph Consultative TCP or so the TCP and IP beacons developed by the US depends the advanced research or the project agency which called the DARPA. The TCP or IP models is considered less, but technically more in the tune with the modern the protocols, because both models are still used when describing modern by um, modern day protocols. These articles will take a look both of this model, this layer, and how they can be related to each other. So the OSI model is consists the 7 different layers that are labeled from 1 through 7. So first is the physical. This is the layer 1. The layer 2 is data link. The layer 3 is network. The layer 4 is transport. The layer 5 is session, and layer 6 is presentation, and the layer 7 is application. So this is layers 1 to 7. The physical layer slash layer 1 is the OSI model is the physical layer because it is responsible for the transmission and reception of wire level data. The physical layer is where it dictated how bits are represented across the specific network medium, regardless of whether the networking medium is electrical or optical in the construction. The physical layer handles how the data physically encoded and decoded. Example of the physical layer. This would include whether a specific voltage of an electrical medium represent in 1 or 0, or another example would be how a received specific wavelength would be interpreted. So the next one is so um, so so the first one is physical layer handles so uh, data link layer is the layer 2 of the OSI models. The data link layer is responsible for its link establishment and determinations, frame traffic controls, sequencing, acknowledgement, error checking, and media access management. The most familiar standard used data link layer include the IEEE 802.3 or the Media Access Control or MAC or Logical Link Control or LCCCC lab sublayers. So the LSC acts is interface between the physical layer and the MAC sublayer. And the MAC sublayer provides the ability of multiple terminal of a computer to communicate the same physical medium. Other standard example asynchronous transport mode or ADTM, the high level data, point to point protocol or PPP, and the high level data link control HDLC, and the frame relay and the point to point protocol or the P2P. So the next one is the network layer. Network layer is the layer 3 of the OSI model. Is named the network layer. Is the routing of the network traffic begins. The network layer is not only makes the traffic router decision but also provide the traffic control and logical addressing or the internet protocol or the IP address. The most common layer are protocol and is IP, but other commonly used protocol include the Internet Control Message Protocol or the ICMP and the Internet Group Messages Protocols or IGMP. So the transport layer or layer 4 of the OSI model is named the transport layer is responsible for a message segmentation, acknowledgement, traffic control, and the decision multiplexing. The transport layer also has ability to perform an error detection and corrections, resends message to ensure a reliable message depending on how specific transport layer protocol used. The most common of the used transport layer protocols is include transport control protocols or the TCP and user datagram is protocol is the UDP. So the layer 5 is the session layer. The OSI named the session layer is responsible for the session establishment, maintenance, and termination. This is the ability to have multiple devices uses a single application for a multiple location. Common example of the session layer is a protocol are named pipes and NetBIOS. So the presentation of the layer is the layer 6 of the OSI is named by the presentation layer and this is responsible for the character code translation or ASCII versions versus EBCDIC versus Unicode data conversion, compression, and encryption. Some common examples include multiple purpose, internet mode, extension or mine, transport layer security or the TLS, and the secure socket layer or the SSS. The last layer is the application layer, or the layer 7 of the OSI is named the application layer and is responsible for the number of the different things depending on how application. Some of these things includes uh, sharing, remote printer access, network management, and electronic messaging or the email. There are large number of application layer protocols that are familiar to the common internet is using the file transfer protocol or the FTP, domain service or the DNS, the hypertext transfer protocol or the HTTP, simple mail transfer protocol or SMTP. The TCP or IP model has a line like the OSI model. The TCP or IP models is layered and is used in the same fashion and as the OSI model, but the Beverly layer. As a modern internet and the most communication use the internet protocol or the IP. The TCP or IP models is technically in the lines with the modern network implementation. As stated before, the layers of the TCP models is considered um, then the OSI model, which basically means domain control implemented can be considered in three areas between one areas and another. So the TCP or IP protocol should often referred to as TCP or IP protocol contains the same protocols referenced in the earlier OSI model section. So the OSI and the TCP. Um, so the OSI and the TCP is so the OSI and the TCP model is OSI is a generic model um, that base is upon functionalities of each layer. TCP or IP model is a protocol-oriented standard. OSI model gives guidelines on how communication need to be done with the TCP or IP protocols layout standards which the data internet was developed. So OSI versus the TCP reference. So similarities between the TCP and the IP reference model. Both the references models are based on the upon layer architecture. The layer in the models are conferred which another are physical layer. So the difference of the between OSI and the TCP IP references model is OSI model is generic model that is based upon the functionality of each layer. TCP IP model is a protocol-oriented standard. So that's all for the explanation of LAB plus OSI and the TCP. So I hope you learned something from my blog and thank you for watching and listening. So goodbye.